Hey, whoever's here early, starting in a second here. Trying to inhale as much coffee as I possibly can. All right, welcome to evidence-based audio number 203. And this is personality is more greater than evidence. I would have just put the greater than sign in there, but it wouldn't let me. I guess it's against the YouTube rules or something. So let's see. So first of all, here's a screenshot of the next version of NoDQ from AIXDSP. Just finishing some touches on here, but man, I love the visuals on this thing. And this will be up to date with all our other plugins soon with the same registration, same everything else. Dynamics on every single band. You got however many octaves, 8 octaves or whatever of EQ. And they're all note based. So if you get things like one note bass guitar, you know, the problem where a bunch of frets on a bass sound very similar to each other, you can really dial that out with this thing. You can kind of thin up the any boost you want to make for that specific note, and you can duck out frequencies that are really overlapping a lot, and maybe just bring up a harmonic that is more distinct. Even though it seems like it would change the bass sound a lot, it really doesn't, just clears it up. And then there's dynamics on each band, like I said. And there you go. If you haven't used this before, I'll try and make a video on this newest one. But man, I just love these visuals. It looks like a beautiful piano key and a nice spectrum display. All right, so next thing, I promised you guys I'd put this on the Vaporware watch. This is the Audient SP8. This is a mic preamp set, ADAT compatible. So it's 8 channels of mic preamp to ADAT, and it's also got ADAT input, so you can get digital to analog conversion. It also will let you sync from ADAT or word clock, I'm sure. And so that gets rid of a lot of the problems, like all the silly clocks that I have in my studio from the 1990s, believe it or not. I've got 2 of them, actually, 2 Aardvarks. Just bizarre having stuff this old in order to run modern equipment, you know. So letting it sync to ADAT is good. The word clock on it is switchable termination, or at least that's what they claim. So this is actually a really cool piece of gear. So, you know, I figured it may not come out anytime soon, but it looks like B&H has an advertisement for it. Let's go check that out if it's actually shipping. It says new release item coming soon. That's a little scary. So not there yet, but could be. They're already taking pre-orders. That's usually a good thing, unless you're a QC anon, then it could be bad. Of course, here's Reverb with it double the price of anybody else. If you guys haven't known, Reverb is absolutely insane. Except in this case, that's not what it was. This is the 2 of them. He's selling 2 of them, I think. 16 channel rig. It's going to come with like 8 channel snake, looks like. 8 channel snake, some ADAT cables, and some mic cables. Actually, this wouldn't be a bad deal. So I don't understand how they're doing this here. I'm not sure that this can actually ship though. Is it going yet? I just don't know that these guys are out there for sale yet. If it says coming soon from the other guys, but there was we were talking about last time, there was a audio interface that went along with this thing. But in this case, yeah, it looks like they're selling 2 of them. So that's actually not a bad price. It comes with a lot of other stuff too. Strange. Okay, who else is selling these things? Pitbull Audio, free delivery from February 1 to 6. It is January 28th. So does that mean that this thing's going to be here in 4 days if it's not there already? Let's see if they actually have any in stock. In stock. Okay. These guys are claiming in stock. I'd like to get some of these. I think I'm going to get some, and I'll report back how they are. Notice that there's not a knob for each channel. There's a you probably select it, and then you use this one single knob to turn it on or not off. There's a looks like there's a DI input. There's a phantom power, or you can pick mic. And I'm not sure if there's a pad or not, but this looks really good. If that, if it doesn't have a pad, that could be the one thing that breaks this whole deal. But let's see what it says. I think it had a wider range of mic gain. Yeah, let's see. Features. Channel status. There's instrument. Hey, lightly glazed. Who's that? Is that Tom? Multi-channel smart gain. I'm not thrilled about that part. I'm sure it's cool, but I'd like to turn that off. Let's see if it says. No, that doesn't. I don't want. Can I get to the specs? So it says 2 junction FET instrument inputs, but does it have a pad? So there's no word clock out. You'd be using a T, but if it's got a terminator, then that's if it's got switchable termination, that's fine. So 58 dB a gain. I'm just not sure if there's a pad here. Yeah. Anyway, looks like Pitbull Audio is already selling this thing, so there you go, in stock, $500. I have to get 4 of these things to get rid of all my Focusrites if they actually work. For a variety of reasons, mostly clocking, but the fact that you got digital to analog conversion and you don't have that silly compressor in your way. But then again, if it doesn't have pads, that's my problem with the Focusrite Octoprix Dynamic, is that I don't think it has pads, and it's got a compressor that will never use. Anyway, so that's off of that. So that was our vaporware watch. So next thing is, this is from Clickbait Monkey XL here. There's been some pictures of Amplitude's Tonex pedal, like, leaked. It seems legit. There's a lot of threads out there talking about it. So if you don't know, Tonex is software that, like the Kemper, but probably much better, I would say, because it's, we've had generations of learning how to get these algorithms right in the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, whatever. It does the same thing with a profile and whole amp setups. You plug your amp in, and somehow it black box magics the sound of your amp by listening to it and running tests through it. And so, of course, everybody said, hey, we just need a pedal so we can put this in our pedal board and alongside whatever else we have. Most of you guys know I have a Helix. I've never been able to get certain amp sounds out of that Helix, though I love the Helix just fine. But there's some sounds I'd like to have, so I wouldn't mind having this Tonex in there. The trouble is, so far that we've seen in any of the leaks, it doesn't have digital input, digital I/O. So you're going to be adding converter latency no matter what. I don't like the size of this thing. I wouldn't be able. I have a giant pedal board. I wouldn't be able to fit it on there next to my Helix. I'd like to see a much smaller one. I don't really need any features on it. I don't need any knobs, just to be able to select the preset and tell it what MIDI channel or what MIDI message actually sends that. I could do that with the Helix, but so I need something way smaller. I guess I could try and throw this on my pedal board. I don't think it would really fit though. But So this is another one of those 3-button things. I have a 3-button Boss GT1000 core I'm programming right now. These things sound good. It's just, so let me go on a little side rant here. I like the sounds and stuff that I'm getting out of the Boss. I have both the GT1000 core and the GT1000, but I don't like the editing software. I don't like that the effects are fixed. It's there's some things not to like about these. If you're gonna spend your money, I try to, what do you call it, Valton, whatever. GP200 this week started programming one, and I think the thing was, it's definitely under $400. It might be under $300. This was unreal. It's like a little mini Helix or Pod Go or whatever. Has a included expression pedal. Sounded really good, and the software for it was awesome. But it turns out you don't even need the software for it. Everybody says that about the QC, but man, I would have loved to have an editor with the QC. But the Veloton whatever GP200 was so easy to run without a computer. It was just absolutely unreal. But anyway, so that's another one of these. I think that one has more than 3 buttons, but so many of these things have this 3-button thing, and I just don't know how people get along with just 3 buttons. But we're going to try. So hopefully I'll have something to report. But that's how this thing's set up. I think this is meant to go with something like an HX Effects or some other effects processor. I would love to see a full pedal board from Amplitude with Tonex inside it and everything else Amplitude. Remember, they were the first guys who had the sack to... Everybody's worrying about this Eventide harmonizer patent, as if you could have a patent on the concept of harmony, which has been going on since before there was even electrical music. Amplitude just said to hell with it and put a harmonizer in there. So there's a lot of innovation there. I know they do a lot of things that make people mad, but I would really expect them, and it's crazy to see them as the latest to the game. I would expect them to see a full-size pedal board to compete with the Helix, with the GT1000, the FM9, and those kind of things. And this could really be the heart of it. So keep an eye out for this Tonex. It's probably real. But like I said, I want a much smaller version of this. And I would love digital I/O so that I don't have to stack up any latency. All that said, so I'm going to go through this thread a little bit. I know you guys just love the forum drama, but this goes to right to how we talk about things. Glenn Fricker, again, made a video called "Pickup Manufacturers Don't Want You to See This" or something like that. And it was about in the recorded, let me put it this way. At a certain gain level, I know that's always the cop out, right? But I'll make it, I'll just steel man everything. Past a certain gain level, the brand of pickups doesn't have all that much to do with the recorded signal coming out the amplifier. How about that? People are strawmanning this to say that pickups don't make any difference in your sound, but that's not what Glenn says at all. But I think the version that I'm saying is the amplified sound of a guitar amp, the pickups don't really matter, especially when you're at a certain gain level. And look, I struggle with this because I have so many different types of pickups and I insist on it so that I'll have different sounds. But once you get them to about the same volume level, same output level, and have them at the same spot along the string's length, the recorded sound sounds very similar. Now, I know when I'm playing, or I guess I don't even know if I can say I know, but in my experience, when I'm playing, I have an easier time playing EMGs and blackouts than I do not just lower gain pickups, but allegedly the EMGs and the blackouts compress a little bit. And so it makes it easier for me to play. That said, in my forming years, I played passive pickups all the time. In fact, my purple guitar still has DiMarzio deactivators or something in it. But that's the claim, and one thing that's definitely true is moving your microphone that's pointed at your speaker a half an inch or 3 or 4 degrees has way more difference in your output um, than changing pickups does. That's for sure. I know people may want to push back on that, but sorry, you move a mic, that is a whole different game of tone and relationships between frequencies. But I think in order to do this right, I'm gonna have to unignore a lot of people, and I gotta take a screenshot of this because otherwise I will forget to re-ignore them. So let me just say, let me get a screenshot here, and I'm gonna. Oh my god, I don't want to do this. Unignore, 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 unignore. Oh, that's scary. Okay. So first we got a guy saying Glenn is never right. Terrible YouTuber. You know, I'm okay with that. Now, look, I'm not here to defend Glenn. I'm here to defend reason. And look, you guys know how I feel about videos where the thumbnail has an open mouth in it, right? So, and Glenn is definitely one of those guys. But it'd be wrong and kind of dishonest for me to say that I haven't been on his show before, because I have. And we get along well. Somebody else gives the magic 8-ball. Somebody else says, what an idiot. The part about Nitro I did find funny. That's another thing. There's guitar players out there that believe that the output of an electric guitar sound is different based on whether it's nitro or polyurethane paint on it. I think last year when we had Tom Jump himself on the show, we talked a little bit about that. So here's one myth that I always see, and it's not strictly true, I've found out, but it says, oh my God, I forgot about this guy since I did click do not follow channel a long time ago. I do not play ultra high gain metal, so none of his revelations are important to me. By the way, he says these things don't matter, but he starts the video announcing that the strings he is using do a very good job. Dude, these things do not matter. Actually, it did. When if you put in a string that doesn't conduct as well against strings that do, it makes a huge difference. And he actually showed that. But there's this legend that if it's like really high gain, then it just doesn't matter. Things don't really matter because everything sounds the same at there. But if you really think about it, why should that be? No matter what, you make the gain, it's going to make it louder. It's true that it saturates. And I think that it's almost like it's not just a multiband compressor, but it's like it's a multiband limiter. And a certain gain amount, it just flattens out the frequencies. But I don't have a mechanism for why that would actually happen. But the thing is that even when you start backing down the gain, the clean ones sound different. Pickups do have a resonant frequency too. But if you get pickups to be the same level, even clean, they're usually pretty damn close. There are different voice pickups, but again, like there's probably some truth to the fact that when you really saturate the hell out of it, there's less difference between pickups. Somebody else says he can't play ultra high gain metal either. He's utterly unwatchable, but these are all good for him. That's engagement anyway. So James Freeman, and remember, this is a guy who has had a lot of insights on this show already. There is a difference between pickups when playing, but the difference diminishes when hearing the recorded sound. Kind of like the difference between modelers with high gain, where the IR matters far more. In my opinion, this is a great topic to talk about, how important it is the entire experience of authentic gear playing and recording versus the final sound, which can be achieved faster and easier than ever before. It's true. We were doing a Rob Halford album when those first pods came out, and his rep brought them, and me and the guitar players were sticking them on anything, like the kidney bean shaped ones, and it was just amazing that, because speaker sims up to that point were pretty bad. And we were just able to get a sound onto a demo immediately. I know people hate those pods and stuff now, but man, that was a game changer back then. So somebody else makes a claim, and actually this is one of the guys that I got unignored, because I have a policy. If I ask a direct technical question, we've actually had this as a show. It's a technical question. It deserves a technical answer, not preaching, not ad hominems, not attacking the character, not sermonizing. But I have kind of a rule on these forums that I'll ask a direct question, especially if somebody made a claim about me, 3 times. And if all I get is evasion or insults, I just put them on ignore. Then this is what happened with this guy. He says, if the recording is of good quality and not using too much high gain, the differences do not diminish. That's really not true. For example, try getting this tone with anything but a P90. I've tried with the accurate AV comparisons at the DAW, and I could only get almost satisfactory results with the P90 on a Strat, though not a golden LP like Gilmore uses for that song. It's not getting close with any single coil or humbucker. Now, a P90 is a single coil, right? Is that true? It's P90 pickup. I thought those were single coils in a humbucker shape. History of the... Well, that's Guitar World. I don't know if they're going to tell the truth here. Let's just look real quick. Yeah, it says it's a single coil. So, of course, that's going to sound different. All right. And that, again, that's not a claim that Glenn made. So, but anyway, let's go on here. Says, for me personally, being a live player in the first place, what you mentioned above, namely the playing feel of whatever it might be, is paramount. So that's like saying, like the EMGs, they feel more compressed. It's easier for me to get the sound, the hits that I'm after, like easier for me to get artificial harmonics and stuff. Let's see. All that's got quite something to do with its authentic versus whatever it might be. The music industry lives from selling authenticity. They simply don't want you to believe in what works. Instead, they want you to buy the next 10% more real thing, quite obviously crafted with painstaking accuracy for more everything. By the way, in the light of that, it's actually astonishing for Fricker to say that pickups don't matter. Even more astonishing as, at least for playing field, they actually matter a lot. But again, you can tell that who's actually watched this video and who hasn't. He's talking about the recorded sound. So there's another guy saying that is one of the P90s, but that is changing from humbuckers to single coils, which is not a claim Glenn made. So here comes that same myth about the high gain. He has successfully proven when you set an amp to make a guitar sound like a chainsaw, it'll always sound like a chainsaw. By his logic, pickups and other components do not matter and are all snake oil because no matter what, his guitars always sound like a jar of bees with various EQ sweeps. This is the guy that touted the tonal superiority of Marshall valve state, for Christ's sakes. Of course, his logic fails once you step out of the micro genre he tends to like to record. Once you do that and make the guitar sound like an actual guitar, stuff matters. I mean, do I have to say anything? So, but the jar of bees is funny. So here goes another ignored guy. As I said recently at the Fractal Audio forums, it is like that people that cannot eat anything without ketchup. Do not invest too much effort in elaborating their food and never invite them to an expensive restaurant because it's a total waste. They have a kind of impaired or primitive taste at their palate. Now, never mind the snobbery here. And we've seen how many times sommeliers have been just completely wrecked when actually put to the test. But, they're claiming that there's all these differences. So why don't you show it? So I always say, if you got a point, just show it. Just give us some evidence. What's this show called? Evidence-based audio. If you're going to make a claim, back it up with some evidence. Okay, so here's a mod from this place. And I may be in danger of getting kicked out of this forum, actually, because I dare to ask for evidence and tell the truth. It's remarkably stupid of him to say this from a mix engineer perspective. Well, as a mix engineer, you may notice that guitars don't sound as different as you think they do. But guess what? If you move the pickup up and down the string, like neck pickup versus bridge pickup, boy, do they sound different. So how is that? That always sounds different, whereas different pickups don't always sound different. So he's saying, he's having trouble with one pickup, and let me read this verbatim. Just last week, I had mentioned how my challenge submission wasn't working with the JB for the way I played. It wasn't tight enough for the palm mutes at that tempo, not for how I dial in my tones play anyway. I used the exact same preset with a different pickup and got it tracked. Now, if I just tracked with the JB and handed it off to someone to mix, there'd be endless back and forth over why the palm mutes sound like ass and what's needed to make them clearer. In this case, the mix engineer would have to say, dude, it doesn't matter how I EQ this. You can't EQ a recorded track and make a pickup tighter in the process. You can only remove frequencies and hope it stands out more. Now, you're talking about palm mutes and stuff. You're talking about gain. I have a feeling that your two different pickups had vastly different outputs the way you had them set. Or they're in different places. It's going to make a huge difference how close that thing is to the string or how loud the output is. So another one, mocks bassist but can't play his way out of a paper bag while staying in his said bag with the world's most crappy vibrato. With the personality of a cheese grater grinding into your face, horrific YouTuber. So notice, no evidence has been countered yet. Now, there's this anecdote about this Jeff Beck pickup versus something else. So, the confirmation echo chamber comes in. Here's somebody else. I can't abide people who have crappy opinions on gear. And even though I'll be the first to admit I don't know a lot about this stuff, I do know good tone when I hear it, even if it comes from amps, guitars that I don't prefer. But with the general consensus here that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I find myself resisting the urge to watch his videos. There's more to tone than just how it sounds. The tactile response is the thing as well. No, tone is how it sounds. Feel is something else. And again, that's not Glenn's claim. You guys are saying a lot of stuff, but you didn't watch the video. And sorry, TSJ Majesty. A lot of these guys are idiots and don't know what they're talking about. Glenn actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to recording. I will take issue with him on a couple things, but in general, he's pretty much right. And when he's wrong, he admits it. You guys should try doing that sometime. You won't be as dumb. We say this all the time in this show because I'm quoting what used to be the head egomaniac over at the Atheist Commercials of Austin, but he would say that I want to believe as many true things as I can and as few false things as I can. And I care whether or not my beliefs are true. And as long as you go through life with that attitude, you don't have to hold on to dumb things, But these guys are just digging their heels in. And, I give a little anecdote too. I said, the copium is rich in here. It's like when DNA testing came out and it turned out that so many Pacific Islanders were not from the Middle East a few hundred years ago. And they found out they shouldn't have given their land away in exchange for their own planets in the afterlife. The special pleading will drown out even Mastodon. Because now we really are getting into religion when you're digging in. Like the way Aaron Ross says it, it's when you believe things not just without evidence, but in spite of all evidence and contrary to all evidence, and refuse to provide any of your own. So here's another. I refuse to click on it. I have heard enough of him talking out his ass and to ever be bothered again. He's not a valid source of intelligent info. The end. He actually is. What's the profile type of the subscriber that follows him? And of course they go to it's guys who play low tune guitars and really heavy metal. Bunch of complaining. Let's see where we get to actually. So one of the guys says it feels like he's breeding these anti-high-end gear kids, if that makes any sense. Now, again, this is another myth. Glenn is not anti-high-end gear. He's anti-lies about gear, or he's anti-common sense that actually isn't backed up by evidence about gear. Let's see, let me make sure that I'm ignored. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you don't want to spend a lot of money, don't spend a lot of money. But that's not Glenn's point. It never has been. This is a straw man. And it's like this guy Woody here. He says, I mean, in a way, that's great. All this, you've got to own this list of gear to be a legit player. BS is incredibly gatekeeping and discouraging for the not so financially fortunate. And it's true. Remember, the reason I do this show is because once upon a time in the religion of pro audio, I was raised to believe that you had to have this kind of mic and this kind of mic preamp, or it would just sound bad, no matter what else you did. And that is just not true. And, they said the same thing about mic preamps for us as they're saying about guitar junk here. So, and admittedly, it's not easy for music YouTubers to find a sensible stance on. You can make worthwhile music with inexpensive gear while simultaneously dangling the sponsored gear carrot in front of very expensive cameras. Let's see. And so this guy, I think he got dogpiled on another thread. He said, his audience certainly isn't the gear forum with people whose hobby it is to chase down 1 dB in tone difference, if that difference even exists. Forget about comparing single coils versus humbuckers, passive versus actives. If you compare humbuckers for a moment, you can see that a few dB in broad difference in BMT. I'm not sure what BMT is in this context. Pickups also act like second-order low-pass filters, so you can change the resonant frequency. However, relative to the effect of the BMT, bass, mid, treble knobs on your amp, a boost pedal, or an EQ pedal, the differences between pickups are much more subtle. And compared to moving a speaker, the question of the video isn't really what the hyperbolic video title suggests. It's not that pickups don't change the sound, it's whether it really matters relative to all the other stuff that makes much more drastic changes. The answer to that question is, to a guitar hobby basement dweller, yes, because what else would they spend their time and money on? So if they matter to you, then they do. But, this guy got it right. For the irony alert, I think I was just kind of surprised at the sheepish, hive-minded mentality. That's what happens with Tonewood and true believers, right? It was a different kind of experience than being here. No, it wasn't. You guys have a whole bunch of Tonewood nuts that echo chamber off each other. Let's see. My gut tells me that he can't hear the difference, aka the majority of Kemper users that really thinks it sounds the same as the real amp. And again, here we are into this sommelier stuff. When you really put guys like this in front of an ABX test, usually they'll run away before you even can do the test. But when you do get them on an ABX test, they can't tell the difference between the quote unquote real amp versus the sim. They say they can, but when you actually test them, they can't. So, I try and inject some reason here. That channel is among the very most honest ones in the recording sphere on YouTube, like it or not. And that is goddamn true. How many lying recording channels have we busted on this show over and over and over again? The fact that he has had me, and especially Ethan Weiner, who is the James Randi of the audio world, on his channel more than once speaks volumes. And yeah, he's had me on there. He's had Ethan Weiner on there. Ethan Weiner is like public enemy number one to all the religious nuts that believe in this like magical mic preamp stuff, magical cable stuff. He's the ultimate audio skeptic, even more than me, I would say. I think I like to jump into these fights a lot more than he does, but he's the real deal. If you ever get a chance, watch his Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics AES video where he really goes through a lot of these audio myths. And so I also say that, and when he's been proven wrong, he admits it, which is more than I can say for 99% of them. You may not like his style, but he encourages you to try and post up some refutations of his findings, just like I do. Anytime somebody calls me out, I say, hey, can you provide some counter evidence? They never do. They attack you, they insult you, they tell you about your mom, but they won't post evidence. So again, here's a straw man. I think most will agree that you absolutely do not need high-end gear to make good recordings, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with getting good gear if that's your thing. Nobody said that. And so I saw, look how hard the true believers hold on to Tonewood, for example. Of course, there really are some nuts in here with believe in Tonewood, so I'm trying to clarify. Let's be clear, he is most certainly not against high-dollar gear, as he has piles of it and many times recommends it. What he has tirades against are lies told by or myths spread about gear at any price. Because of confirmation bias, when people have to justify their past spending, they more often notice when he mentions something that they've purchased. So it may seem like he's focusing on that, but not at all. He tears into $20 mics just as often, right? Remember the BCM mic videos? What about the Midas or whoever, Clark Technic, LA2A, and Pultec? If you want to see real confirmation bias, watch when the Gibson cultists see one of his videos and then refuse to actually address a single claim he makes. So I keep trying to allude to this. If you don't believe this stuff, or if you got a different opinion, present some evidence. Please just give some evidence. And so here comes somebody. Here comes a challenge. Somebody tells me, tone wood doesn't matter until you find two identical guitars made with the same wood and one has a resonant mojo while the other is totally lifeless. Prove that ever happened. If it happens between the same wood species, imagine between different ones. Well, you got to prove that it happens with the same first. And any idiot can tell you that just because wood is the same species, it isn't necessarily anything like another piece of wood from the same species. So species definitely doesn't matter. Wood resonance might matter. That's your plausible reason for this phenomenon, but it doesn't seem like it does. Or a guitar with a dead note caused by the wood absorbing the vibrational energy of the strings at one specific frequency. But how do you explain that experience to a YouTuber that only plays chainsaw tones and has an open mouth at his thumbnail? Of course, he is right on his own ecosystem. With that level of pandemonium, these things do not matter at all. No. Switch between neck and bridge pickups. You'll hear the difference. There's a difference there. But it's not from the tone wood. And then another guy, just giving an anecdote, not any evidence. I test tones on many guitars and many pickups. There are insane differences between them. So much that one tone works with one will suck with another. Sorry, no. Prove it. This has been challenged for decades, and nobody's ever presented any real evidence. So, I asked him, said, then by all means, provide a test sample for proof. Until then, it's all, but 500 eyewitnesses saw it. No, I don't know any of their names. My girlfriend lives in Canada, but I promise it was 500 eyewitnesses. That's what kind of crap you get. So here's another guy. The same pickups don't even necessarily sound the same in different guitars, let alone considering different pickups in the same guitar. I'm not going to provide clickbait influencers with ad revenue. Can someone sum up the nature of Glenn's proof? Well, again, that's not necessarily the claim. So the guy who got dogpiled on, who's more rational than the rest of these fools, the proof is empirical and subjective. Basically, just shows that moving a mic has much more dramatic effect than swapping a pickup. That's true. It's really not controversial, just the title is really. So in the context of recording, a pickup isn't all that important, and that's true. So here's a guy, didn't watch the video, but is free to just talk a bunch of crap. To me, they're kind of two different aspects, and I suppose without watching his video, there's not really a common frame of reference for additional discussion on my part. Thanks for the summary. Yeah, maybe think about that before you open your mouth, but never mind. This kind of contrition only lasts for a second. Just like dowsers, when you prove that their dowsing didn't work, they'll go away for a little while, then they'll come back to justify why they were so wrong and how they're right about their magic. So I, when I asked, said, then by all means, provide a sample for proof. Until then, it's all, whatever. Let's see the evidence. And this guy says, see post number 10. Tried to get that tone with something like a DiMarzio Titan, the Kent Armstrong Motherbucker, or any other non-P90 pickup. And find for yourself if it makes a difference. You're saying that I need to show that a single coil can sound exactly like a humbucker? No, I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's true. And nobody made that claim. And so I said what I figured, didn't even address the same question. So there's strike number one. Like I said, I got a 3-strike policy on these guys before I ignore them. And I got to say, I remember having this discussion with Glenn and some other people, and all of us were pretty sure that the pickups had a pretty big difference, because I keep buying guitars with different pickups, but when I put them on the track, I don't really hear that much. So I'm saying in this particular case, at the beginning, Glenn was sure that the pickups had a huge difference in the recorded high gain tone. I'm not sure if it's him or someone else who cited, of course they sound different. Look at their resonant peaks. They're totally different. And on the face of that, they certainly had a point. A pickup was an EQ of sorts, and they're definitely tuned. There was a lot of back and forth, and I think this video actually came out after like 3 years of discussing the topic. I even bought a few guitars so that when I record, I can use different pickups when stacking tracks. A few years ago, I really started not being able to tell which guitar I used on which track if I forgot to label it. One guitar being 707s, another one 81.7s, and another blackout 7s, and the last a bare-knuckled nail bomb passive. Those other three were active. But after the recorded sound, if I was getting them around the same gain level, which I do through various means, I couldn't tell the difference. Other friends, when they were being honest, were sort of reporting the same thing. And that's kind of how this started, because I remember people were talking about this, and I was like, no, that can't be true. The pickup's got to be totally different. And then I say, I'm still convinced that at like blues level of gain, you will hear much more of a difference between pickups. But when we get barely past AC/DC levels, it's really hard to tell. Sorry. Let's remember that this is an industry and a hobby where people at the very, very highest levels will tell you with a straight face that files which null with each other to the level of dither noise sound different than each other. How many times have we talked about when people have two sum, they always talk about how DAWs sum differently and they all sound different when they don't. And we sum them. We take two outputs of the DAWs and then we phase flip one of them, or polarity flip for the pedants out there, and play them together. You get nothing. And some of these people will still say that they sound different. ABX are double-blinded, placebo-controlled, statistically significant tests are like crosses to vampires for so many of these people who hold on to claims, not just without evidence, but in the face of all evidence. So here is the militant know-nothingist. This is like one of those creationists that just like, we'll still talk about the Paluxy River tracks, Pickups make a difference. Tubes make a difference. I've done my own tests. I'm not obliged to justify myself to anyone. I went through all that with the Kemper fanboys. I'm not engaging with people who can't listen critically. Really? Can you listen critically? I don't know if I believe you. And this is, now here's mirror profiles. Now we have a separate problem with this guy, but this is somewhat rational. I think the problem with Glenn is he goes into these tests expecting wild differences, and then when he gets small differences, he concludes that the difference doesn't matter. He calls it scientific, but he doesn't really do a really good job of picking decent-sized sample pool or really understand what's causing differences. Like, why would he expect valves in themselves to have different EQ curves? That was the claim, though, wasn't it? The outcomes usually come with quite bold and blanket statements, which, again, can be misleading. And that's true, but that's not what he said here. He said, moving a mic makes a much bigger difference to the sound than changing the pickups, if the pickups are set the exact same way with the same level of output. But when these guys are pretending that they hear differences, okay, these alleged golden ears always claim to hear these differences, these magical differences. These guys all have regular jobs. Some of them are like machine operators. They've blown their hearing long ago. And they tell guys like me, whose job is to sit and listen all day long, that they have so much better ears than I do. They're full of crap, first of all. But the proof is when we actually do ABX tests and test whether or not we hear the difference of this. Like I say, usually they run away from an ABX test. But when they do take them, guess what? They hear the same things we do. They can't pick this thing out of that thing, whatever. So anyway, he's remember Glenn Fricker, whatever. You may or may not like his mixing, but he knows what he's doing. Let's see. There was some other stuff. So here comes some more straw man. Remember that we were talking about how they're claiming that he says he doesn't like high-end gear. So here he goes. I think a point of a lot of these folks have a coping mechanism where they feel like their cheaper amp or gear or guitar is just as good as the expensive stuff, and only a fool would pay more. Glenn's stuff probably validates him too. Oh, the irony, right? Hey, Mr. Pot, how'd you like to meet Mr. Kettle? But it's true. Like, what is that, $100 Dean Vendetta? I mean, you weren't getting a better by any objective standard guitar by paying a way the hell more in most cases than that $100 guitar. So it's not about the money, but it's actually the inverse is true here. These guys are trying to justify their expensive spending. Let's see. So I said, this is all based on a straw man. Glenn has never said he doesn't like expensive gear. That's a straw man you guys made in order to cope with defending your purchases. Okay, so here, this is what I'm trying to get, because I like to nail people down. So he says, but Glenn's "this thing does not matter" videos do give validation to people who believe that having an expensive guitar or amp is not worth the money. That's not exactly true, but it can be. Same as those Jim Lil "where's the tone come from" videos that are often not particularly scientific and tend to make the wrong conclusions. Okay, now here we go. Specifically about Jim Lil here, that the "where does the tone come from" videos make wrong conclusions. Which wrong conclusions? So let's see. So let me just skip ahead to where I directly engage these people. So I say, I'm quoting that. I'm sure your evidence counter to Jim Lil's will be forthcoming, right? Somebody says, okay, so this is why I wrote this title here. Somebody responded to that last statement of mine. I'm sure your evidence counter to Jim Lil's will be forthcoming, right? He says, Jim Lil seems like a nice guy. I'd watch his channel. It's not about the evidence. It's about the personality behind the evidence. And there you go. It's not about reality. It's about how I feel. You know, so this is like this whole feelings over facts nonsense. Somebody asked me a math question. But I'm still looking now. I've actually laid down the challenge. And so I tell them, like, everybody's trying to run away from the question I ask, you know, where's the counter to Jim Lil's video? So I say, dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. So finally, this guy gets back to me. I'm sure your evidence counter to Jim Lil's will be forthcoming, right? He says, as an example to his Only Pickups Matter video, his air guitar was nothing more than a big headstock and body, 2 tables. So here's a bunch of people claiming that the neck wood matters, the shape of the guitar matters, the species of wood matters. And yet when you take 2 tables and don't even have a neck, just a tuner on one of the tables and a bridge on the other, it sounds just like any other guitar. And they're trying to use that as counter evidence. So I said, that isn't exactly a counter. It's just confirmation. And so some other nut job says, so personal experience is not valid unless you share it on YouTube. No. Glenn is wrong even when he's right. So here we go for another dodge. And this is why this guy ended up on ignore. And I said, I'm sure your evidence counter to Jim Lil's will be forthcoming, right? I know like you sound like a broken record, but we got to keep in mind what the question was. He says, what's his hypothesis? How would you apply it in real world circumstances? As far as Glenn goes, I suspect that's just likely it's just his online persona to generate niche and views. Well, that's not an answer to the question. So we got somebody else. I'm amused how last week in Guitar Nihilism Bickering, the headline was, guitar construction materials don't matter, only pickups. It's empirical. And I'm making fun of it, but that's actually true. You guys haven't provided any evidence to the counter. Now this week we find out pickups don't matter. It's only the microphone. I'm looking forward to next week's installment where we conclude microphones have no bearing on the final master product. Tone is in the engineer's mixing mastering fingers, which actually that's true. And he even admits it. So I say, when he said, I tend to keep my bickering over in the other place and not try and get into forums I actually like, but there's no evidence of anything per se in Jim Lil's video. His final conclusion with the air guitar was the silliest part of the whole thing and not the technique I've seen people presenting it as. And so I say, of course, I'm sure your evidence against his conclusion will be forthcoming. There's evidence against what? That he created an air guitar? No, he didn't. He created a guitar with 2 massive wood anchors with strings suspended over a large room. Okay, so I said evasion noted, and no, their conclusions aren't at odds. If a giant table and a tiny V sound exactly the same, the species of wood certainly doesn't matter. And so, of course, he says, "This is not evasion, bro. I have no interest in engaging with you." Yeah, when you ask a direct question, they always run away. You already, in this thread, took off topic and unprovoked shots at people who play Gibsons out of the blue. Ad hom, ad hom, ad hom. Wah. There's no point in an attempt at a civil discussion, much less an actual debate. After these guys are sitting there insulting Glenn Fricker over and over and over. And so instead of answering the question, he tries to stick me with the question. Remember, like oh yeah, well, if we came from monkeys, how come there's monkeys now? How come there's still monkeys? Tell me that. Checkmate. So he says there's a difference between a clinical application and resulting theory and an application of the findings you've alluded to between various guitars. Prove me wrong. And so I just said, you know what? It would be a fun exercise to catalog all the logical fallacy examples in this thread. And here we go. This is how these meatheads keep walking right into it and then running away. So he quoted me saying that it would be a fun exercise to catalog all the logical fallacy examples in this thread. He says, especially yours. So, of course, what am I going to do? Somebody directly challenged me. And so I said, I'm sure somewhere I said, hey, show me one of my logical fallacies. And he says, I already did. You never responded. Okay, there you go. Lie number one. Where did he ever do that? So I said, all these chances to provide a shred of reputation, but it never comes. At best, we get ad hominems. And I'm responding now to him where he said, I already did. You never responded. I said, specifically, I see no fallacy against me named by you. I can sort of infer that you might be claiming the hasty generalization fallacy on my part. Is that correct? So now, 2 direct questions in order to clarify his question. Guess what the answer is? I'm going to respond, and then our conversation has come to a close. Run away. You've presented a few that will fall under an umbrella of cognitive distortions, including but not limited to mind reading. I believe it's better for you to discover them on your own. In other words, I just lied, and now I'm going to run away before I back it up. And so I says, none of those were a logical fallacy. You lied and failed. So, of course, what can he answer? Incorrect. You have a poor grasp of the subject matter. Stop digging your hole. Hey, I asked a specific question. If you would have asked it of me, I would have told you, or I would have said I was wrong. But you didn't. So somebody else, when I'm talking about evasion, noted and know their conclusions aren't at odds. If a giant table and a tiny V sound exactly the same, the species of wood certainly doesn't matter. Okay, so body construction does not matter for your ears. No, not my ears. Your ears too, regardless of musical context. Nope. Doesn't matter what musical context it is. Pickups don't matter for your ears, it seems. Nope, never said that. So you're really telling me that they're all electric guitars sound the same? Nope, straw man. That's quite astounding. This and the increasingly aggressive attitude you're showing is doing you and your reputation a big disservice, just saying. I didn't say any of that. But go ahead and hate me because you're wrong. Someone else said none of this stuff sounds exactly the same. Kind of proving my point, aren't you? But I said, take it up with the guy who made the claim. It certainly wasn't me. The claimant used it as a hand wave to dispel the air guitar. So I'm trying to clarify what their point is. So a giant mass of wood gives nearly identical audio results as a small amount of wood. Are you going to claim that the air guitar didn't sound remarkably similar to the same guitar with the wooden body? Because if they say that they sounded different, they're lying, and everybody knows it in that case. If this is the case, could you get a wood tone by gluing a chopstick to your pickup? Because, I mean, where is it? Where does the essence of tone? It's like the ship of Theseus. Where does wood tone come from? How much do you need of it? So I say a sawdust, a popsicle stick. How much wood do you need before you achieve wood tone? And unlike any other measured phenomenon in existence, adding exponentially more has no readily observable effect. Because that's what they're claiming. This little bit of wood and this giant amount of wood sound the same. I'll tell you what, if I dripped one droplet of water into your mouth, you're going to be okay. If I take a fire hose and shove it down your throat, you're going to die. There's a huge difference between effects between different sizes. And before you go on some personal attack diatribe, actually think about the implications of the claims you're making or being forced to defend because of the claims you make. Personal attacks. Check your own posts in here, dude. Wah! You can continue rage all you want, homie. You should read the book I posted a couple pages ago. Discussing physics with people who have a fundamental misunderstanding of them is futile. All right, here's another claim. Not that they've backed up any of their other claims when I have asked them to. Now they're saying that I have a fundamental misunderstanding of physics. So I say, really? Why don't you point out where I got physics wrong? Just one example. I predict evasion. What do you guys think? You guys want to lay bets, lay odds on which physics I got wrong and how they're going to point out exactly what I did? We'll get back to that. So Drew, who's a mod over at the Gear Forum, said, where do you believe the big differences end up taking place or have meaning? Are you actually saying that all guitars, regardless of the wood or pickup, sound the same? So I say, I think the pickups, where the pickups are and how far the pickups are from the string, have the most effect when you're talking about just the guitar. I certainly am not claiming, because it's a stupid straw man, and you can't find anywhere where I said anything like this, that all guitars, regardless of their wood or pickup, sound the same. And neither did Jim Lil or Glenn. I would say that from all the evidence that has been presented, and I have begged and pleaded many times in this very thread for evidence to the contrary, that if you put the same pickups with the same electronics on the same place along the string at the same distance from the string, the wood or lack of it has not been shown thus far to make any difference to the electrical signal coming out of the guitar's output jack. Now, if anyone actually has the honesty to read this far and actually try and understand instead of just dig in with confirmation bias, I care whether or not my beliefs are true. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as I possibly can. So if someone can show me I'm wrong, I am very, very happy about that, because that means I don't have to be wrong anymore. But that's not how this goes when you're dealing with motivated reasoning like in this thread. So please, prove me wrong so I can worry about something that actually matters instead. They never will. So here's somebody, I think he's already going to ignore by now. He refused to answer his questions about what logical fallacies I got wrong, and so he's just asking questions. So the mod is understanding. Gotcha. This entire time I thought it was whether or not changing the pickups made a difference or not. If I get motivated enough, maybe I do this for kicks one day. I have 2 strats with different body woods, and he's going to do this his experiment with himself. And so I talk about what I wonder about. I wonder about scale length. So what I really want to know, and even though there was a Jim Lil video on it, I still have major questions. Scale length. I swear up and down all day and night that a similar Fender length is clearer with the given harmonic nodes further apart than a similar Gibson scale. So that's 25.5 versus 24 3/4. I haven't been able to conclusively show it myself, despite buying a 29-inch scale length guitar for some tests, but I swear it's there. I still think that scale length probably makes a difference. I'm not sure that it matters in super high gain tones, so I'm really not sure about that. I'm not sure at all, but here's this condescending idiot who refused to answer direct questions. He told me I got physics wrong. He refuses to tell me what I got wrong. He says, learn a little bit about electronics and physics. Oh, do you know who you're talking to? And understand some concepts like resonant peaks. Do you know who you're talking to? Inductance. Do you know who you're talking to? DC resistance. Do you know who you're talking to? Or capacitance. Do you know who you're talking to, you idiot? And so he tries to show me like some basic crap about guitar electronics. Dude, are you serious? If we did a debate right now, you had to throw your computer away and I had to throw my computer away, sit in a blindfolded room so you can't read, I'll put any of my guitars up against this guy in an electronics knowledge contest or whatever you want to do regarding electronics. But anyway, this is a guy who said I was wrong about physics and he refuses to tell me what I got wrong. He just condescendingly tells me to learn a little bit of electronics. So, of course, I got to answer him. So, again, you run away when directly asked what I got wrong. I just want people to notice on this very thread, I have continually asked for specifics on what I got wrong. Instead, I just get insults and insinuations. If I'm wrong, I want to know. So they're all running away. He even says, this is called science, a methodology that you seem to refuse. They're not insinuations. Wrong. Wrong. I'm not going to travel the world for you. I've already been there. Look at the frequency spectrogram of two different pickups. If you still believe they'll sound the same, that would be like a flat earther refusing evidence that the earth is not flat, despite all the scientific methods that prove them wrong without the need to travel. Ironic, isn't it, that flat earthers and creationists are calling me a flat earther, right? I even brought up the frequency difference between pickups. I said that pickups, you saw it earlier in this show, talked about how pickups are tuned, talking about how they have different resonant peaks. So again, I'm just going to stand here until they actually answer the question of the claim that they made. What was Jim Little's fundamental flaw in his premise? Which law of physics states that the construction material of a guitar must have some sort of effect on the electrical output? I could even go and grant that the statement was true, and you would still have all the work left to do to show that it would be audible. I don't think there is any reason to grant that, of course, but the point still stands. So again, guy runs away. So why don't you tell us more about your affiliation with Glenn Fricker whenever you're ready? So again, ad hominem. And I already said that I was on his show. Liar. So instead of answering what that fundamental flaw that they accused me was, did you even read the links I provided that explain the concepts of resonance peak, induction, DC resistance? Get the hell out of here. This is why this guy ended up on ignore. Measurability doesn't even matter to him. Yes, I asked for measurements. I asked for any evidence. That means measuring something. These guys are lying. So it's not going to spoon feed you basic science. You still have the burden of proof backwards. No, I'm not the one who made a claim that he had a fundamental law of physics wrong. When you say that somebody's got a fundamental law of physics wrong, you better be able to name that law, or you better retract it. Guys are cowards. Cowards. And then this other douche, man, he did the, okay, we've had many shows on this. Let me Google that for you. Or even Google the subject for some research. This has been entertaining, though. Yeah. So I say, so that's a no. You were going to make claims and refuse to back them up and just use insults instead. Off to ignore land. And so I said, I'll take the JREF million now. Thanks. So if you guys know, there used to be a, when James Randi was still alive and before the religious nuts took over the James Randi Education Foundation and pretty much the whole skeptics movement, there was $1 million prize if you could prove the paranormal. And actually a speaker cable company entered that prize. It was Pair Audio. They were saying that their speakers are objectively better, or their speaker cables are objectively better sounding than other speaker cables. And so it's not like you have to prove ghosts or flapping your wing and flying or whatever. The JREF million was out there for you to provide stuff that seemed counter to basic science. And so I said, I'll take the JREF million now. And I got a picture where I said, really? Why don't you point out where I got physics wrong? Just one example. And I said, I predict evasion. That was my prediction. And I think it got backed up just fine. So after that, I was reported to the mods and, I was warned that I was going to be banned from this forum if I continued to ask for evidence. So here's this condescending idiot again. You're asking us to provide some kind of evidence, but there's nothing like experience and self-learning, discovering things by oneself. No, that's the definition of confirmation bias, you moron. The definition of evidence, the plural of anecdote is anecdotes. It's not evidence. Just do this. Go to a guitar shop. Choose a good non-destroyer tube amplifier and dial a nice, smooth, close to clean breakup tone. Try different guitars without changing the amp settings. Listen, you mean different guitars with different pickups? And pickups in different places? And pickups with different heights? Oh, sure. Sure. I'm sure those will sound the same, idiot. Okay, so let's see. Somebody else is sending me, following that logic, every two Telecasters, to keep it simple, from the same production run should sound identical. That's something you can meaningfully put to the test in any bigger guitar store in a couple of minutes. We've done that, and it's true. They sound the same. But the same stuff, same electronics, same pickups. Now, there's tolerances. So if we were to measure this stuff, caps and resistors with like a 20% tolerance, you can measure differences. You probably won't hear that difference, but even if you do, it's going to be so minor, it's not going to matter. Let's even say you swap the complete wiring and set them up identically to eliminate parts tolerances. Well, there you go. Then even different production runs and materials should not matter. They do, though. Yeah, they do. You make that claim. here's that claim. Let's provide some evidence for it. But they won't. They'll never provide that evidence. And somebody's saying, ask a competent luthier. If you put a P bass pickup into a J bass, the J would still have the inherent J wolf tones. Aren't P basses and J basses like totally different shaped pickups that go in different places on the string? So I said, you don't need to ask a competent luthier. Anyone can measure it themselves with free software like Room EQ Wizard. I don't see that this addresses the question, what was Jim Lill's fundamental flaw in his premise? What was it? How come you guys keep running away? How come you make that claim, you claim shit about me, oops, and then when I ask for you to say what exactly it was that I got wrong or Jim Lill got wrong, instead of answering us, you go and report me to the mods. You chicken weasels. So somebody answered me that dumb answer. So I said, this is the part where you're supposed to present the evidence, not restate the claim. I've tried to be extremely specific with what I'm asking, but it keeps going back to feelings. Feelings about me or Glenn or Jim Lill, or feelings about the guitar or anecdotes. The swaps you've done would be actually very good evidence and exactly what I'd love to see. The problem is we've done these tests and we get the opposite of what you're claiming. Okay, so now finally somebody decides to address the fundamental flaw in Jim Lill's methodology, or not. So he says, the fundamental flaw in his methodology is to provide anecdotal evidence and extrapolate from there. Now, that is actually, could be a good point. However, that's not a fundamental flaw. You'd have to provide a counter. How can we be sure that another set of workbenches wouldn't provide a totally different result? He tries to prove a positive, and this is not how science works. The trouble is that his two test benches sound exactly like any other guitar out there. Let's see. Does anybody actually answer anything? So I say I've done this and also a similar test by sticking a bridge and tuner on a chain link fence. Nobody was able to ABX reliably between any of the three. But in your case, you found a difference, so I'd love to see the data. Of course, they're not going to show it. Let's see. Why do you insist on seeing our data? Have you already performed the self-enlightening experiences suggested on post 145? This is like this Damascus Road bull crap, man. This is unreal. You want data? Here it is. These are scientific research papers on the study of wood acoustic properties. Who cares? You know there's a thing called a drum, right? You make different shapes out of wood, they sound different. You make different sizes out of wood, they sound different. That has nothing to do with waving a piece of metal over a magnet. That you got to show the difference. That's the problem. So none of these papers here have anything to do with wood changing the nature. Okay, here you go. Try your alternator on your car and test how much electricity is coming out when you're at, let's say, 1,000 RPM. Now take off your hood. Take off that big hunk of metal that is your hood and see what you get. You get the same voltage coming out. Take that alternator, spin it 1,000 RPM, but attached to a block of wood instead of a chunk of metal. And I guarantee when you spin that alternator at that frequency, you're going to get the same electrical output. That's what you're up against here, and that's where your evidence is going to have to come from. So that's what we get. This is how I got threatened to be banned with this thing, and I am going to put the ignores back on because these guys are idiots, and ignore. There's probably some more that I should be ignoring. Unfortunately, I think one of them's the mod, but that's a bad idea to ignore the mods. So anyway, I'm off hopefully to a ride out tonight. So I'll see you guys later.